Grab a cup of tea or a glass of wine and tune in for Inspired Conversations with publisher Linda Joy. On Tuesdays at 2 p.m. Eastern, Linda creates sacred space for leading female luminaries, empowering authors, heart-centered female entrepreneurs, coaches, and healers. A soulful venue where guests openly share the fears and obstacles they've overcome, wisdom and lessons learned, and the personal journey that led them to the transformational work they do in the world. Inspired Conversations to empower you on your path to authentic, soulful living.
Welcome to Inspired Conversations. I'm your host, Linda Joy, publisher of Aspire magazine and host of Inspired Living University. With all my brands, you can feel my passion. I have one mission, and as you know, it's to inspire women to live their deepest, most authentic and inspired lives. And sometimes that means we're going down this winding road, right? We never know sometimes our next steps. And it takes a lot of courage to continue when you can't see the step ahead. That's why I'm so excited to have an old friend with me today to talk about her journey, but also her insights and the lessons. I follow her on Facebook, and her posts open my heart deeper and deeper into my own truth. So with me today is W Campbell. Laura is a coach, consultant, and women's leadership strategist. In a private coaching and strategy practice called W Campbell Inc., Laura works with women to reconnect to who they are and supports them to become who they are meant to be. She guides each of her clients to reimagine, redefine, and reshape each new and next chapter with intention, courage, and grace, aligning her personal and professional life around the greatest purpose, impact, joy, and fulfillment. As you'll discover, Laura not only believes in what is possible, but actually helps to create a plan and provide strategic support to help you go out and get it. Welcome, Laura.
Oh, what a lovely introduction. Thank you.
You're welcome. And, you and I have known each other for many years and been in the same circles. And so I've always admired your authenticity. And my audience knows it's one of the things that I love about women, when they find that core inside them where they go, I'd rather live my life authentically than hidden behind the masks that we all take on. Why is that important to me? Because I lived behind the mask for the first 35, 40 years of my life. So bring us back to the part of your journey where you began this work in this inner journey yourself, because usually there's a catalyst that sets things off. Yeah. What was yours?
So my true catalyst was my divorce. I was married young, relatively speaking. I was only 2 years out of college before I was getting married. And so when I got divorced, which I never imagined I would be, it truly was the first significant crossroad of my life, where I dove into, how am I going to navigate this? And I was grossly unprepared, but that truly was the catalyst for the journey that has become moving closer towards who I'm meant to be.
It's almost like you had to go through the fire, right, to shed all of that wasn't really yours. And did it feel that way for you, like this painful, because I've been there, went through a divorce, painful burning off of the old persona? What did it feel like for you through that? Because I'm sure there's many women right now, whether it's divorce, illness, other life change, that are in the midst of it right now.
Yeah. I was surprised at the time by how much this ending of my marriage was. It was kind of the rock in the water, and then the ripple was that it impacted every area of my life, financially, professionally, socially, parentally. My kids were very young. And So I was not originally prepared for, wow, I'm going to need to look inward and look at all of these different areas of my life and reimagine what they were going to be. And so I was not prepared for that. But I think for those who are going through it that are listening, there's also a deep invitation in a divorce, whether you're the person who initiated it or not. There's an invitation to reimagine. And it's really hard to do that when your heart is broken and when you feel that this is, a collapsing of your life. I will always hold the voice and the space for what if it's also an invitation to reimagine what's possible.
So beautiful. And like you said, that ripple, I think at one time or another, whether the ripple was caused by divorce or illness, when that ripple hits us, it feels like everything we know about who we are, the life we created, is just shifting. Like you can't, I remember feeling like what's happening. I couldn't get my balance. I didn't feel safe in my life anymore. Would you describe that experience in that same way, of the feeling of being the stranger in your own life and waking up in the middle going, what the heck happened?
Yes, and you know what's interesting, Linda? So that was the first significant catalyst, but then there have been others, and most recently, 2018 for me was another catalyst year. Only the interesting part about that was that it wasn't a key event, right? My divorce was an event, and we often have those, right? It could be divorce, it could be death, it could be illness. It could be significant financial hardship. But for me, I had a different kind of catalyst in my life, the most recent one, that was not an event, which was really interesting. And again, it was another kind of invitation for me to reimagine.
Well, I think, Laura, that's when I started reconnecting with you as you were writing those intimate, beautiful posts about your journey on your Facebook page. That's about that time, 2018, and I just kept saying, whoa, she's speaking to my heart, and you know my audience, and so I would say, like, oh my God, this is so many other women's experiences, but they don't know how to name it and navigate it and put words to it the way you did, and it was so real and vulnerable and authentic, and I've read your posts and cried before, so what made you share the depth of the story? Because, one, I think it's courageous. Two, I love that about you. Your audience loves that about you. But what led you in your heart to do it?
I really appreciate the question so much because I think I decided to share because that year, 2018, for most of it, I didn't have the words. I wasn't truly aware of what was going on, and it took a while. Sometimes we have to trust that the understanding and the words, the awareness, is going to come when it needs to. So I'll give you an example. It was a year in which I cried all the time. I'm a crier anyway. A good commercial will make me cry. But for me, tears came all the time. I was driving and I'd cry. I was going to sleep and just I'd be ready to go to bed and I'd start to cry. I couldn't understand where all the tears were coming from. And I was worried. I mean, I think like so many women, we want to quickly go to I'm depressed or there's something wrong. And I think ultimately what I would say, what I learned is that it was my soul actually trying to speak to me. Those tears were a way of my soul communicating with me. I just wasn't aware of it at that very moment.
It resonates so deeply because as you were going through it and I was reading your post, I said, she's awakening, right? She's having an inner awakening. And I could resonate because I remember a lot of what you described when I had my awakening in my early 40s. And what I mean by awakening, just to clarify for our listeners, the way I use the word is we take on so many masks as a woman growing up, stories, masks, beliefs, etc. And if we're in a marriage or a job, sometimes we make it our persona that we lost connection to ourselves. And the awakening in the way that I use it just means reawakening back to the truth of who we always were, the woman that we forgot existed. Yeah. And so does that resonate with you of what it felt like to reawaken to your authentic self?
Yes, very, very much. And I feel exactly like you do. We hold so many masks and so many roles and so many expectations that pull us sometimes away from that core of who we are as a woman and as a person, a human. For me, I had become disconnected, and it felt a little bit like stagnation. And that was a word that kept coming up for me, is I feel a little stagnant. Things are not in flow. It doesn't feel easy. It feels hard. Things feel hard. And I couldn't really put any other words to it. You know, I hadn't, and I'm a type A, like I want to get down and find the solution, and I'm going to do instead of be. And for me, it was that was a time, an invitation to push pause on doing and get quiet and try to listen and try to listen.
Oh, this is going to make a juicy topic when we come back, because the world, we're always doing, striving, pushing, and we lose ourselves. Again, I can relate. And when we come back from our first break, Laura, I want to talk about just exactly what you said, the energetic difference between the doing and being, and how we can, we have to learn, male or female, learn to stop the pushing and start allowing, dropping into the feminine energies or the softer energies of who we are. And I found that's where I found peace. It's also where I found success, when I stopped pushing. So let's talk about that when we come back, and I'll be back in a moment with Laura Campbell, and I invite you to learn more at laurawcampbell.com. We'll be right back.
A conscious lifestyle for a mindful life. OMTimes Radio. IOM FM.
Inspiration for a woman's soul. Aspire Magazine. Inspiring and supporting women on the path of self-discovery. Claim your free digital subscription today, which includes access to thousands of dollars of personal development bonus gifts from Team Inspiration partners. Claim your Aspire Magazine subscription today at subscribetoaspire.com.
Hey, America, we need to have a little talk. We've got more food than we know what to do with in this country, yet 17 million kids in America are struggling with hunger. Makes no sense. Luckily, the Feeding America nationwide network of food banks has volunteers gathering excess food and getting it to hungry kids. They're kind of like food angels. Hey, become a food angel yourself by supporting Feeding America in your local food bank at feedingamerica.org. We can't do it without your help. Brought to you by Feeding America and the Ad Council.
Are you trying to get from point A to point B and need a little advice? Connect with the counselors at OMTimes Advisors. Whether you're looking for a life coach or a spiritual intuitive, the advisors participating at advisors.omtimes.com were carefully chosen based on their gifts, skills, and professionalism. OMTimes Advisors, connecting you with the best advisors in the business.
Hi everyone, this is Shay Parker, the host of Best of the Best, which airs live right here on IOM Radio every Tuesday night at 8 p.m. Eastern and 5 p.m. Pacific. I'm super excited to bring you expert guest hosts, spiritual discussions, free psychic readings, and so much more. I can promise that you will not want to miss this one-of-a-kind, fun, yet touching, down-to-earth show. Join us every Tuesday night at 8 p.m. Eastern, 9 p.m. Pacific on OTR-FM. This is Shay Parker, and I can't wait to see you there.
This is OTR-FM, part of the IOM Radio Network.
Welcome back. You're listening to Inspired Conversations. I'm your host, Linda Joy, and with me is Laura Campbell, coach, consultant, and women's leadership strategist. And today we're talking about her personal journey to rediscovering herself after a lot of life changes, and I'm sure we can all raise our hands to relate to, sometimes life throws us curveballs. So, Laura, right before the break, it was just something you said, and I was like, yes. It was you realized that as a self-professed type A personality, which I was back in my 30s and 40s, that you just had this inner knowing that the time was done to stop pushing and start allowing. Well, it's easy to intellectualize and know that. How did you actually do it? Because it's almost like a reprogramming of who you are.
It was very hard, and I'd like to say that I had this great awareness and I just knew what I needed to do. But the truth was, there was a brief time. There was about 2 months in which I was grasping. I was like, I'm a coach. I'm supposed to know this. Maybe I need another coach. Maybe I need a therapist. Maybe I need to go on an antidepressant. Maybe I need to, I was grasping for what do I do? What do I do? Who can help me solve this? And the truth was, and this is what I would really invite our listeners to do, is to trust themselves. I always know this, that we can trust ourselves to look for where we feel pulled. I went to an author, a book signing and an author talk. And it was at the time truly that I heard Chip Conley speak on his book, Wisdom at Work. And he spoke about this new endeavor that he had created called the Modern Elder Academy. And when I heard him speak, my soul said, I need to go to Modern Elder Academy. And I ended up going on a 2-week retreat. And I was forced into quiet. It was a digital detox for 2 weeks. And I have to just really confess, I was scared to death. I almost backed out. That fear was so strong and so prevalent. And I just took a deep breath and I said, I'm going to do this. I have to just surrender. If this is where I feel pulled, then I'm going to do that. And it was there in that quiet. And that's where I said to you, sometimes we have to get quiet. When I stripped the noise away, I was able to hear all the things that my soul had been trying to tell me through tears, through all of those tears and some of those sleepless nights. I was able to hear. So the quiet was really what needed to happen.
It is what needed to happen, but I love that you just made the statement that I think is so important, that you said you were really scared, right, to go on this 2-week silent retreat, but you did it, right? You did it anyway, and I think for so many, they have so many of us, and I was one of them, that we believe fear means don't do something or we shut down, right? Haven't you discovered that because you face that one big fear, that it's almost like you built your trust muscle with your inner wisdom? And do you notice you face your fears more bravely now? Because that's what I noticed, but I've been doing it for a long time. Do you feel that facing the fears and doing what you were afraid of empowered you even more?
Yeah, yes, definitely. And there's 2 things that I've learned along the way that I not only practice myself, but that is at the core of what I know I'm meant to do in the world in the ways that I support other women. One is whenever I feel resistance to anything, I know that that's what I need the most. And so when that resistance comes up, that's my signal that I need to lean into it. And I've made a joke of it with myself, right? I roll my eyes and I'm like, oh, that's what I'm supposed to do because I'm trying, my intuition wants to avoid it. So, I mean, that's a signal. And the other thing is to always remind myself, like you just stated, that the things that most scare me have always been and continue to be the things that transform me. And so being in that place of fear and doing it anyway, I have to trust that I will be transformed one way or the other. And that's how it's played out.
Well, and what I see is every time we face our fear and we do it, it's almost like we're making this relationship with the divine source, whatever our in particular word is, that says, okay, I'm learning to trust and let go. I'm learning to trust and let go. And then when we get through the thing that we were feared, like your 2-week retreat or starting a business or doing something that really stretches us, the more we do it, it's almost like the voice of fear gets quieter. I'm not saying it ever goes away, because you and I know it does not. But it's almost like the awareness, like that you just stated about, okay, I'm meant to do this because I'm afraid. It's like the awareness shifts, so the energy around the fear shifts.
Right. So you know what? Here's the thing. I have embraced my fear and made it my friend. She and I have this lovely relationship where I know her job as my fear is trying to protect me. She does not want me to be uncomfortable. She does not want me to have to move through like crunchy, scary times. But she also forgets that I'm really strong and that I can do hard things. In fact, every single one of us can do hard things. We are so resilient and we're so strong and we're so courageous. And so I have to remember that she's doing her job and I have to love her for it. And I also have to say, I'm also super strong and I can do this. So thank you, but no thank you.
It's so true. And from far, and I'm curious if you relate, and I know a lot of our listeners will too, is I used to, especially in my 20s and 30s, I'm 50, how old am I? 57 now. When fear came up, I was petrified. I would run from it. I would avoid whatever the situation was, right? Whether it was a tough conversation I had to have or a job change. I would freaking run. And we all know what you run from just chases you. It never goes, you're never really running from it. You're just wasting life energy. And one day, and this is going back 30 years, my daughter was young and she's 35. I think it could have been one of my counselors. She just said, Linda, what would happen if you just stopped and turned around and faced the thing that you're afraid of? And I'm like, you want me to look at it? Because I was an avoider. So, and she said, what if you looked at it as a scared little girl deep inside you? And would you ever yell at a little girl? And I said, no, of course not. She goes, would you ever run away and leave her just because she was taking a temper tantrum? I go, no. She goes, well, there's a part of you. That flipped a switch with, like something switched to flipped a switch for you with the relationship with fear. That helped me see it in a more, it doesn't mean it stopped all my fears. It just meant that I had more awareness to go, Lynn, you don't need to run from this. Just talk to it.
Right.
So I love your analogy. And I want to, before we go on, because I think it's so fitting, there's this quote on your website, which I love your website, by the way, so much there. And it says this in big letters, and one day she discovered that she was fierce and strong and full of fire, and that not even she could hold herself back because her passion burned brighter than her fears. That's what I'm hearing about your journey, that you switched it so your fears were not taking away your life force energy, but now your passion is brighter than your fears. I'll tell you, when I saw that quote preparing for the show, I'm like, oh, I so get this. And that's why I wanted to share it with our listeners. And you can find that on at laurawcampbell.com on her About page, and there was so much there on that page that spoke to me. So is that like written from a personal experience, or it captured your experience so profoundly?
Yeah, and and again, that's why I believe you and I have spoken about this, that life is merely a series of new and next chapters. That's why my divorce was that first moment where I faced that fear. It's why so many of us stay in relationships or in partnerships or marriages that don't necessarily serve us. It's frightening and huge to get out of them. But that was the first time for me. But then there are others, and we don't know when they're going to come, and we have to listen to our souls, right? That's when we have to really pay attention and make friend with our fear, because that feeling of fear, I think, is actually just that invitation for doing things that scare us, but that will totally and utterly transform us in the most beautiful ways.
So, Laura, I find that so true. And I know you faced many transitions, and most recently you faced another big change in your life, which is your move. And when we come back from our next break, I want to talk about that, because you decided to document the journey to your move, which I've been following. And I want to know about that decision, why you chose to share it, and bring us into that story, my friend, when we come back from break.
Absolutely.
And we'll be back in a moment. I'm with Laura Campbell of laurawcampbell.com. We'll be right back.
Free your mind. Expand your soul. OMTimes Radio. IOM FM.
We can all use a little more peace and joy in our lives. Don't you agree? Counselor, best-selling author, and self-nurturing expert Kelly Grimes of CultivatingPeaceAndJoy.com is passionate about empowering overwhelmed and exhausted women to live with more peace, joy, and meaning through the practice of self-nurturing. Through her experience working with individuals, speaking, providing workshops, and teaching professional and leadership development to forward-thinking organizations, Kelly knows that nurturing peace in the world begins from the inside out. That's why she created the free Cultivating Peace and Joy mobile app that brings you beautiful self-nurturing reminders, guided meditations, empowering practice tools, and daily prompts with an inspiring question to guide your daily self-nurturing practice. Download your free Cultivating Peace and Joy mobile app today at cultivatingpeaceandjoy.com.
OMTimes Magazine is one of the leading online content providers of positivity, wellness, and personal empowerment. A philanthropic organization, their net proceeds are funneled to support worldwide charity initiatives via Humanity Healing International. Through their commitment to creating community and providing conscious content, they aspire to uplift humanity on a global scale. OMTimes, co-creating a more conscious lifestyle.
Do you have time to read that inspiring book or that blog post you've been meaning to get to? In your busy world, how do you improve yourself and keep your life going? I'm Lisa Kay, and my Between Heaven and Earth radio show can transform your life just by listening. Be uplifted with inspiring topics, positive stories, and ideas that really work. Between Heaven and Earth Radio is conscious living for your soul, every Wednesday at 4 p.m. Eastern Time.
The number one reason girls drop out of school in sub-Saharan Africa is lack of access to feminine hygiene products. The Pads for Schoolgirls Project, an outreach of Humanity Healing International, is changing this paradigm by setting up sewing programs at schools, teaching girls a vocational skill, while producing the reusable pads that help keep them attending classes. The girls pay it forward by making and giving pad kits to other girls in need. To learn more, visit humanityhealing.org. Humanity Healing is where your heart is. A conscious lifestyle for a mindful life. OMTimes Radio. IOM FM.
Welcome back. You're listening to Inspired Conversations. I'm so grateful you're here with us today. I'm with Laura Campbell, coach, consultant, women's leadership strategist, and I got to tell you, a woman dedicated to facing her fears, moving through them, and seeing them as a path to transformation. So you recently moved, and it was not, sometimes we move and it's not a big deal, but this was an emotional, personal, deep journey for you, which brought up another layers of fears. So take us back, because you decided to document the journey to your move. So bring us back to the decision to move. What led to it, the awarenesses that you came through the decision-making process?
Absolutely. Yep. So it actually all came out of that year of, crying, that year when my soul spoke to me and said, there's things you're not connected to. And I went on my 2-week retreat, and I got really quiet, and I realized that I had disconnected from parts of me, and that what I needed was a change. And so the short version is that I knew that I wanted to move. My parents are going to be moving to Florida, and so even though I had never imagined I'd move to Florida, I decided what's a priority for me is being present and close in proximity to them, so I'm going to do that. But I really had never lived anywhere else but Connecticut my entire life. And so once I made that decision, I realized how frightening it felt, and that knowing that fear also was an invitation to reimagine what was going to happen next, my next chapter. And the reason I decided to document it was because while it was just a move, right, and people move all the time, I actually was embracing this as the opportunity to let go of things that I did not want to bring into my next chapter. And that included letting go of stories that I had held onto for many years, that I felt like these stories are drag on my boat, right? These are not stories that are serving me. They need to go. There were some relationships in my life that I had held on to. They were comfortable, but they weren't really aligning to what I wanted to create for myself. And so I wanted to really think about those and be intentional about letting them go if they needed to. And I wanted to really share with whoever might need to hear it that it's not easy. It's not easy, and that all of these emotions, there's no one who moves through this life without those emotions, and it's okay to be with them. And as part of my journey to being and not doing was to allow myself to indulge in the feeling all the feels, and being open and honest about them, and not pushing them down, and not pretending that they didn't exist. And so I did. I documented for 90 days, the 90 days to my move. And in letting go of some of those stories and relationships and a lot of possessions, I was actually kind of surprised at just how powerful and how deeply emotional and moving the whole experience was, much more than I had imagined.
Yeah, and they were beautiful and so raw and vulnerable. And you gave words to the experience that I think a lot of us may have experienced but didn't know how to name. Like, you were willing to go there. And that's why everything connected so deeply with everyone. And at the same time, there was days that when you were posting, you were raw and vulnerable and like, I have no idea what I'm doing and what's going to look, and you were so real. Did you find that after the 90 days, because then you got quiet, right? Was that a cocooning time?
Yeah, it was a bit of a cocooning time. I had underestimated, there was the moving, the 90 days to the move, and then there was this whole period of time when I got here to Florida, and wow, and this is part of kind of the anatomy of significant change and transition, is that when we let go of something, whether it serves us or not, right? I think this is kind of where people think just because something wasn't great for me, when I let it go, it's going to be awesome. And sometimes even when we let go of things that don't serve us, we still mourn the space that they were in. And there's all this space. So I let go of all of these things. And even though some of them, it was really essential that I let them go, I found myself down here in Florida with all of this open space. And open space is scary. So it was more fear. Right? It was that moment of, oh no, what did I do? And I wanted to get in my car and drive all the way back up to Connecticut, because that's what I was most comfortable with, even though I knew that it was no longer serving me to be there. And so I did cocoon for a bit. I needed to just be still and be quiet again. And so that's what I did. And I wrote, but I wrote a little bit more privately, and really felt into the surrender and the trust that what was supposed to come would come. And it did. It has.
That's a beautiful part, because I'm going to talk about community too, because you had to adjust and grow and feel like you could build a community again. And you navigated that journey too, is how do I fit in this new place? Yes. Professionally, emotionally, in all ways. Talk about that part of the journey, because for many who desire a move, I think that's one of the greatest fears is, but I won't know anyone. And you did it.
That's right. Yeah, no, I did. And this concept of community and belonging is such a powerful one. And I've shared and I've written about this a few times, that I've always had some feelings of being an outlier. And I've gotten lots of women who've reached out to me and said, I feel the same way. I've always felt a little bit like an outlier, and that's that push and pull and that tension around showing up always fully and authentically as who we are, and trusting that the right people and the right communities will find us. My move was very much because my children are older and they're grown and flown, and I'm not in a partnership. My role was very much about coming back to me as a woman, and not having the as many masks around, because I had less roles on my plate at the moment. And so there was this, where do I fit in and where do I belong? And I have to say, Facebook, say what you want about it. There were so many lovely, wonderful people who extended themselves and said, I would love for you to meet this person, and I think, I have a friend who would be a wonderful person for you to talk to. And I just decided that I would say yes to every introduction and every invitation. And it's been such an incredible, magical journey of having people come into my life that are really beautiful and lovely. And I'm just slowly building community and finding where I belong, and trusting my soul that it's going to guide me. It's going to tell me when I'm feeling good, and it's going to tell me when I'm not.
So now I have a question that's going to go full circle to the beginning, where you said you've always been the type A personality that, pushing, striving. Do you notice now that you have more flow and balance between what I refer to as pushing, striving, masculine, and the allowing, softening, trusting? Do you feel you have a dance going on now?
Oh, Linda, so I'm in year 2 of a very deep surrender practice. Surrendering is very hard for those of you who are listening who are type A doers, and many of us are, especially if we're partners or mothers. We're doers. I have had to practice very hard at surrender and trusting, and I didn't have a deep practice. It was one of the things I learned in that 2-week retreat, was that I had disconnected from that place of trust and faith. And so I slowly put new rituals and new practices into my life so that I could build that muscle. And it is a muscle. I just want to invite anyone who's listening who feels that they may have disconnected from that it is a muscle, and we can build it and we can practice it. And so that has been incredibly important during this particular transition, because I am just allowing things to happen and trusting that they will. And it just means I'm having to be very comfortable with myself. And there's a few, and I'm happy to share them, but there's a few authors that I've been reading that have been very helpful in that arena. There's a few people I've been listening to in my meditation practice who have really strong words to support surrender. And like anything, I'm not perfect, and I forget, and then I have to remind myself. It's a very imperfect journey, but that surrender practice, and I know you practice that, and you have a beautiful business that supports us to do that. But it is a practice daily.
And I'm glad you said it. It's like the imperfection of it. I tell my clients, we're not striving for perfection because you are divinely imperfect. So life is going to be divinely imperfect, and let it go. And when you have the word divine in front of imperfection, it's a reminder of you don't have to have and do it all. Let the divine, whatever that means to you, your source, etc. Know you're a team.
Yeah.
So that's what it's about. And I've been watching, that's why I used the word awakening earlier. I've been watching your journey and your practice evolve. And I said, I remember it just everything you've been going through just really relates to me as a woman, because even though we may use different words to describe it, I remember the inner process of what I experienced in my awakening to my truth, right? And I'm still awakening, and I started this journey when Nikki was 7. I started my healing journey, and she's 35, so it's been a long time. But like you said, I fall down, I get back up and say, Lynn, that old script just snuck back in, but you catch it. That's awareness. That means we're on the journey. We just have to keep recalibrating, and that's a phrase I use with my clients a lot. It's like it's just time to recalibrate. That's all.
Yeah, and we have to remember that sometimes not knowing is exactly where we're supposed to be. There's a lot of time that I spend in the not knowing and the uncertainty. I mean, that's been my whole journey is, will I make friends? Will I find community? Will I came down here single and I am welcoming partnership. Will I find people I want to date? All those questions, that our mind likes to bring to the forefront. When we are building a surrender practice and a trust and faith practice, then we start to be able to tell ourselves, yes, it's okay that we don't know. It's okay. Things are going to unfold exactly as they're meant to.
Oh, so true. And one of my favorite mantras that helps me because for many years I also lived with anxiety. It's a lot better in the last 15, but of course when you have that tendency, it's always there. And so when it arises, there's a mantra I use that in this moment, all is well. Because in this moment right now, I'm talking to you, all is well. It brings us back to the truth that we don't have to know all the answers. Just be in this moment. Be fully present in it. And if you're projecting ahead, you're in fear, which means you're in the future. And if you're in regret and resentment, you're in the past. And then that means you're not here living your life and being present in it. So she had so much wisdom today. I'm going to take our final break, and when we come back, I want to know how this personal journey has impacted the work you are doing now with women, or maybe that you are desiring to do, because I have a feeling there's so much that's going to come from this. So we'll be back in a moment with the amazing Laura Campbell. You can learn more at laurawcampbell.com.
This is OTR-FM, part of the IOM Radio Network.
Ladies, it's time to remove the veils of pain, shame, and self-doubt that are smothering your inner light and leave you feeling disconnected from the truth of who you are. You are a radiant, divine woman of strength, love, and wisdom who deserves to live a life of joy, love, and inner peace. Life and spiritual coach Mal Duane, who is often referred to as the champion for restoring women's self-worth, supports women in stepping out from behind the energetic veils that separate them from the truth of who they are. It is possible to move through your fears, break through limiting beliefs, and release the shackles of shame and self-judgment. And you don't have to do it alone. Take the first step in reclaiming your life by visiting malduanecoach.com for empowering resources and supportive services.
This is Terry Van Horn, and I want to invite you to join me for my weekly radio show, Hailing Light, on OMTimes Radio, every Wednesday at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. On Hailing Light, we want to bring love, light, and blessings into your world. You can find out more about us at www.healinglightonline.com. Blessings.
Me, a cat, moving in with a new human. It took a little getting used to. She has these weird games she likes to play, like this giant feather. She sticks it in my face. I swat it away. She sticks it in my face. I swat it away. It's almost like she thinks I enjoy it. But seeing how much fun she gets out of it, well, I guess it makes it all worth it. Humans.
A person is the best thing to happen to a shelter pet. Be that person. Adopt. Brought to you by the Ad Council and the ShelterPetProject.org.
This is OTR-FM, part of the IOM Radio Network.
You're listening to Inspired Conversations. I'm your host, Linda Joy, and today we're talking about how life can take twists and turns, the journey to rediscovering your courage, the courage that's always been there, right, and how to learn to face your fears instead of run from them. And from that place is when you begin to consciously create your life. And Laura's been sharing her intimate journey. So, Laura, I'm curious because I know that my journey led me to the work I'm doing in the world and continue allowing myself to continually unfold. But it always fuels my work, which is my, actually, I don't like that word because it's my passion. Have you already noticed that your personal journey is influencing the work that you're doing or that you are moving into?
Yeah. I think you know, our passions, our work in the world, I feel like you do. It's a passion. Is always reflective and enhanced by what we are experiencing. You know, my work in the world, I feel like my soul is here to support women to move into scary places that transform them. And in order to do that, I have to continuously also walk into scary places that transform me, so that I can remain connected to what that experience feels like. What's so interesting, and I know so many women in my world are really always thinking about what are they meant to do? How do they take their skills and their career paths, you know, forward in a way that brings it all together? And I've been really fortunate to have a very interesting education. I have a lot of education, a lot of training, and a lot of experience that now when I throw that all together into this, think of it as like a martini glass, and I shake it up, it gives me, you know, a really interesting blend of skills to be able to hold space for women who are doing that. I called, you know, I've always called myself kind of a strategist because I do think we have to surrender, but I do think we also have to take inspired action.
Oh, yes.
One step at a time, right, one step at a time. And that each little step, right, energy begets energy. One step will lead us to more energy and more opportunity. And we don't know what that is sometimes. But I like to really hold that space for women to be where they're at, but to also create a plan for taking inspired action, one small step at a time.
So true, and the inspired action is the key part. And I like what you just said. We don't always have to know the full path. We just keep taking the next step ahead of us. And for those who struggle with fear and self-doubt, don't you notice that our type A personalities, they want to see the path A to Z. How do you, and you, so you're laughing because you can relate, right?
Totally.
So when you have a client that's type A, and here you are trying to help them navigate this new way of being, what's your guidance to them when they can't, because none of us know the full step. That's a false illusion. We don't know the full path ahead. How would you guide them through that?
So it's really interesting. I had a coach and mentor who, and she described it perfectly for me. So I'll share it because in Connecticut, where I was raised, there can be some dense fog during certain seasons. And she said it's kind of like when you're trying to drive through fog, and if anyone has ever driven in fog where you can't really see the whole road, you can only see where your headlights are pointing, which is about 6 feet in front of you. And she said, if you just focus on the 6 feet, then the next 6 feet will become clear to you. And so that was super, super helpful and comforting to me, that I could trust that if I just focused on these first 6 feet, then I would have a clear path to the next 6 feet. And so my hope is that for those of you listening, that might be comforting for some of you, because that's really what this journey is about. And sometimes we have a clear path for, a clear vision of what the path is, and other times we're really clinging to those 6 feet because that's all we can see. And so we have to move. And again, I'll just, double click on the fact that this daily practice of surrender and trust has been the thing that has been most helpful, because we're always going to feel the discomfort that comes with uncertainty. There's no way around that. Uncertainty creates discomfort. So, whenever we're looking to move forward or to transition or to take a bold or frightening step forward, it's going to be uncomfortable.
Yeah, it is. But I've learned, as you have, that what's waiting for me on the other side is always for my highest and best. When I walk through the discomfort, the experience waiting for me on the other side is always beyond what I could have dreamed of. And I don't just mean like we just went through seeing the bright side, right?
Yep.
We didn't know, and I'm referring for those who follow me on Facebook, the Seeing the Blessings # post with my honey's double diagnosis. Through that journey that you were following also, there was no way of knowing the next step. There was no way of knowing what was going to happen. There was no way. And we had to just, like you just so beautifully described, lean back, trust, and yet still take the next step. We couldn't see nothing. We were in complete fog, shut down, highways shut down. But when you're in that place of surrender that you just described, there's a sense of peace. And you read the post. We were in peace. I'm so glad you brought this up, because I want anyone that's struggling right now, that's listening, who's in the midst of the fog, who's, fogged in and feels like you can't figure out the next step. What's waiting for you on the other side of the fog when you take that next step is your best life. The next best step will reveal itself, as it did for myself, my honey, Laura. So I think that's great guidance. Just you have to take inspired action. You can't stay stuck.
No, and sometimes, and you know this, you're gonna know exactly what I'm talking about. Sometimes the most inspired thing you can do at that moment is to breathe deeply. We don't realize how shallow our breath gets when we're feeling uncomfortable and frightened. And so sometimes all that inspired action you can take is just to stand where you are or step outside and breathe deeply in. And you'll find that the rest of your body will follow suit. And you'll just be able to kind of find a moment of comfort even in all of the discomfort.
A beautiful piece of wisdom to leave our listeners with, Laura. I could keep on chatting with you, my friend. I want to invite everyone to learn more about Laura, her work in the world, by visiting laurawcampbell.com. Be sure to connect with her. And, Laura, I want to thank you for just being you, for being so real, vulnerable, sharing your truth with us. You've been an inspiration as I follow your journey. As a woman to woman, it's just, I just love watching you bloom. and your
Thank
inspiration
you.
for all
honor.
of us.
Oh, what an honor and privilege to be in conversation with you. And, you know, we're all in this together.
We are,
and
that's why I do this show, is to bring women with stories like yours so that other women know they're not alone on the journey. And that's so important
Definitely.
to me.
Agreed.
Well, thank you again, Laura. And until next time, everyone, choose love, choose joy, choose happiness. I'll see you next Tuesday.
Thanks for listening to Inspired Conversations with publisher Linda Joy. Join our sacred space every Tuesday at 2 p.m. Eastern and meet leading female visionaries, empowering authors, heart-centered female entrepreneurs, coaches, and healers. Inspired Conversations with Linda Joy is a soulful venue where guests share the obstacles they've overcome, along with wisdom and lessons learned on their personal journey that led them to the transformational work they do in the world. Inspired Conversations to empower you on your path to authentic and soulful living.